Good evening, everyone. I'm excited to see so many people joining us tonight. As Dorothy mentioned, my name is Jenny Young, and I work with her and many other awesome NEA colleagues in the ESP quality department. Um, Dorothy was correct, when she mentioned that we do have a very special guest with us tonight. I'm excited to have Jen Bramson, excuse me, our 2024 NEA ESP of the Year. She's a specialized paraeducator from Utah. She's here to share her expertise and experiences around sharing commonalities, finding common ground and sharing commonalities and shared values with a variety of stakeholders. So I will turn it over to her so we can get tonight going.
Thank you, Jenny and Dorothy, and good evening, ESPs. My name is Jen Bramson. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm here in my classroom at McPullen Elementary School in Park City, Utah. For those of you that I haven't met yet, I am the 2024 NEA ESP of the Year, and I am thrilled to have this opportunity to share this space with you tonight. Slide. First, I wanted to thank you all. As you know, we celebrated ESP Day on November 20th during American Education Week. I hope all of you celebrated, and better yet, were celebrated yourselves for your hard work and commitment to ensuring every student's success. Thank you for all you do for our students, unions, and communities and public education. And thanks to all of you, almost 10,000 of you, who joined Vice President Princess Moss and me on the ESP Day Teletown Hall event. It was an honor to be part of that amazing event. First, I'll start with a little bit about myself. I have lived in Park City for 27 years. It's where I met my husband, Jeff, who's a massage therapist. We share 2 adult children. Annie is close to finishing her degree in elementary education, and Sam is an anthropology major. We love where we live because we love the outdoors. I can cross-country ski out the back door of my work or a short walk from my house. In the summer, we hike and spend time at the lake, boating, and dancing to live music brings me so much joy. My favorite experience in the last year was when I got to dance on stage at a Michael Franti concert. Slide. All right, work. I have been an early childhood educator for 19 years. And for the last 11 years, I've been a specialized paraeducator at McPullen Elementary School. It is a Title I school with a Spanish and English dual language program with strong community engagement. Our multicultural festivals are epic. I teach full-day preschool to 16 4-year-olds. Being an early childhood educator, I never thought I would get to teach in public school. And I am proud that my school district has committed so many resources to developing a thriving, inclusive preschool program that I get to work in. Slide. All right, my union journey. All of us have a union journey, a union story, a personal journey to where you are now. I joined the union 8 years ago because I was working 35 hours a week and still did not get healthcare benefits. When I joined the union, I thought I was just advocating for my preschool team, but I quickly realized that union work is for the benefit of all employees. And I knew I wanted to improve the lives of my colleagues and coworkers. I have now served as the vice president and president of my local PCCEA and have served on our negotiation teams and handle advocacy cases for my members. I am the current Secretary Treasurer of the Utah School Employees Association. As a USEA board member, I created the Wasatch Back Coalition, which represents the 7 rural districts that stretch along the mountain range that I live in, so that we could bring more resources to unions that are often overlooked. I spend as many educator days on the Hill as I can at the Capitol during the legislative session, advocating for children, public education, unions, and LGBTQ+ rights. When I first told my family that I was going to take a leadership role in my union, each of my family members was shocked and reminded me that I would have to talk to people I don't know. I'm a pretty introverted extrovert with some social anxiety. Talking to people I don't know requires a lot of energy. This didn't come to me naturally, so I had to work really hard on how to communicate and build relationships with people, especially people who have different backgrounds, values, and viewpoints than me. I knew if I wanted to succeed, I would need to develop the right tools to help me level up. I proudly admit that I have been in therapy and take medication for my ADHD. I seek out workshops through my state association, and as members of the largest labor union in the country, we have so many opportunities to connect and learn from one another, like we are doing here tonight. Through the NEA, I have participated in the ESP Leadership Institute, the yearly ESP conference, which is quickly approaching in March. We'll share in the link how to register for that. And have taken numerous trainings about diversity and webinars like this one. One of the valuable lessons that I have learned is the importance of developing shared commonalities and values with a variety of stakeholders that you interact with and I interact with to achieve our goals. Slide. So, why is it important to find commonalities and shared values? As ESPs, we have the power to affect change by building meaningful connections with everyone in our school community, including other educators, students, parents and families, and community members. Our work often requires building relationships with people outside of our bubbles. Over the last several years, and especially in recent months, many of us felt more comfortable in our bubbles politically and ideologically. Polarization has felt more amplified and intense. Now more than ever, it is important for us to lead with empathy and find values and common ground with people very different from ourselves. We have the power to strengthen public schools and communities nationwide. That's why we must use the power of relationships and our voices to lift our stories and advocate for our students and professions. All right, we are ready for our first chat question on the next slide. All right, you're going to enter in the chat. When considering what you do in your work site or local association, who are the most important stakeholders you interact with and why? Anyone? Chat's down on the bottom. Students, absolutely. We all interact with students and parents, sometimes more challenging than the students. Parents, community, students, union members, school board members, superintendents, absolutely. Great one. Greeting visitors, specialists, colleagues and students. Admin, Absolutely. All right, well, let's go to the next slide and see if there are some that we missed. Ooh, I like the entire school ecology. I see all of us on an academic voyage. I love that, David S. All right, so the full list of education stakeholders that I interact with, we covered teachers, specialized instructional support personnel, or SIPs. For those of you who may not know what that is, they are school counselors, psychologists, social workers, occupational therapists, library media specialists, and speech language pathologists, and more. Other ESPs, school boards, students, parents and families, PTA, PTOs, administrator, union members, potential members, other unions, policymakers, social activists, and other community allies, and faith-based organizations. Oh, no slide. Now let's talk about some strategies that I have found helpful when I am trying to find commonalities and shared values with different stakeholders in my community. Strategy 1, being authentic in building relationships. I want to start off with this one because authentic relationships are the backbone for developing shared commonalities and values with stakeholders to achieve our goals. It is in our nature as humans to connect and build relationships. Sorry. As humans, the relationships we form with other people are vital to our mental and emotional well-being and even our survival. Humans have an inherent desire to be close to other people, to connect and build relationships. There are many types of relationships. They will all look different, but all seek to make meaningful connections that will bring about positive results. Building relationships take work, and that work must be intentional. All right, we're ready for another chat question. What strategies have you used to build authentic relationships? Please post in the chat. So I know I start with making sure that I'm mindful of labeling people. All right, I'm seeing talking with coworkers, listening, learning Spanish. I love that, Jennifer. Walking up to greet in the morning. Kids will remember that forever. Ask authentic questions. Absolutely. People know when you are being fake. One-on-one conversations, building relationships with parents, doing special things for students and coworkers, listening. Attending extracurriculars. That's great. Students will remember that forever when you show up for them in that way. Allow a member to teach me things so that they can see firsthand that I am teachable. That is incredible, Rashida. That is the key. We do Friday morning breakfast, and each department has a Friday. All right, looks like comments are slowing down. So I'll share a few of the strategies I use, including being mindful of labels, listen with full intention, make connections, not just contacts. That one's an important one. A lot of times we just want to make the contact, and we need to make sure we're making the connection. Be curious and ask questions about other people's stories. Share parts of yourself and be vulnerable. Be deliberate and authentic in nurturing the relationships, and don't force it. Not every relationship will work for you. I have learned so much by having authentic conversations with people who are quite different from me. Doing my union work, I get judged in my state based where I live. Park City is a ski resort town with the highest cost of living in the state. People assume I'm going to be snobby, and I have to work extra hard to build trust, respect, and communication with my members from around the state. This requires me not to judge who others are or what they value. I acknowledge our differences and work towards building a relationship before I talk about the union. I like to ask specific questions about their roles in schools and ask what is working and what is not working. I ask questions about their life outside of work, and I share appropriately about myself. I might not share that I have a transgender son or other information that might create judgments before trust is developed. But I can leverage and sometimes affect belief systems by introducing this information once a relationship has been developed. I want to give an example of how I have affected change through an authentic relationship in my state. I got to know a fellow board member 3 years ago on my first board retreat to Southern Utah. This board member and I talked for hours around a fire pit about our very different lives. This person is a Utah native, a veteran, hunter, and cowboy. I grew up in Los Angeles, privileged and wild. My husband is Jewish and my son is transgender. We were both so curious about one another's lives and histories. He had so many questions about my son. He was respectful and thoughtful about his questions. Over time, we have built a high level of mutual trust and can talk about our beliefs and different life views and have a deep friendship. During negotiations with his school district a few years ago, he learned that their healthcare policy did not cover transgender healthcare. He was so taken aback by this and called me. I let him know that there was only one other school district in our state that had coverage for transgender healthcare, and it wasn't my district. I will never forget when he exclaimed, "Sam needs his medicine and doctors to stay healthy." He went back and negotiated transgender health coverage for his school district employees and their families. This meant the world to me and Sam. So I will continue to show up and be curious about people with different life experiences and values than myself. Strategy 2. Next slide. Oh, here we go. Yeah. Don't make assumptions about people. Full stop. When we make assumptions, we shut down opportunities to connect. So this is my friend, Andy Marcus. Some of you might know him from the ESP Leadership Institute, and he is the current Utah ESP of the Year. So Andy and I have a story, I wish he could have been here tonight, about making assumptions about people. Andy and I had been to probably 5 delegate conferences over the years and had never interacted. I have to say, I thought Andy was obnoxious. He has tattoos from neck on down, and I never felt comfortable going up and talking to him, and he never interacted with me or engaged me. But about two years ago for the ESP conference, we both were in Seattle together, and we started to get to know each other, and I got to know his wife, Jill, and things seemed pretty good. And we were at an event a month later, and again, we had a really nice time together. So afterwards, I asked Andy, why haven't we ever talked before this? And I'll never forget. He said, well, Jen, I just didn't care to get to know you. So he had made all the same assumptions about me. He thought I would be snobby, that I must be wealthy if I come from this area. And we both had just assumed that we wouldn't have anything in common, which could be further from the truth. Andy is he is loud sometimes, but he is one of the most authentic, caring people that can share. When I won the award this year, he wrote a letter to his members talking about me that made me cry. He just sees people for who they are, and I value that. And we would have never had the opportunity to get to know one another if we hadn't gotten over the assumptions we had made each other. So the meme, I'd rather be a comma than a full stop, means that a period is the full stop. So I'd rather be the comma and not make assumptions about someone, so I don't shut down opportunities to connect. All right, next slide. Slide 3. Strategy 3. Assume good intent and the possibility that things can turn out better than expected. Focusing on shared interests, values, and commonalities sets an intention to work together towards solutions together. I have another story about a board member I mentioned earlier, and how finding a shared value helped us to work towards a solution. We were at the NEA Speak Up and Speak Out conference, learning about representing the LGBTQ+ community. We had an assignment to make a video to get people to care about LGBTQ youth committing suicide. And this board member was having a hard time connecting to the topic. We discussed his work with veterans and how many of his friends had died by suicide. He is a huge advocate for the mental health of veterans. Once he recognized that the value being discussed was preventing all suicide, he was able to connect to the LGBTQ+ individuals and created a moving video that earned a standing ovation. So sometimes we collaborate with people that have opposing views to the ones we hold dear. In those instances, I remind myself that no one is all good or all bad. I frequently work with my representative, and she has passed bills that affect my family negatively. She is focused on making life hard for people who are transgender. But I still must work with her on legislation affecting education. So I must look for the good qualities she does possess. As a mother of a transgender son, it has been painful for me to have to do this, to interact with someone that has passed 6 anti-transgender bills in the last 3 years. However, I've worked hard to find commonalities with her. During the last legislative session, she shared with me that she has an adopted son who is a person of color. The representative and I discussed raising children with marginalized identities, and I was able to talk to her and connect with her as a fellow mother. It didn't stop her from passing her anti-transgender bathroom bill, but I will keep showing up to try to work with her while making sure to support pro-public education candidates to run against her. Next slide. Approach relationships with curiosity instead of judgment. It's important to ask questions, listen to understand, and follow up with clarifying questions. It is easy to get in the habit of judging actions or behaviors we don't like. I struggle with this with my coworkers sometimes. If I stop and get curious about why someone does something, this makes the space to grow. Recently, my team has been struggling with one of our coworkers. They loudly try to control every action and behavior of our students. It's hard to watch. When we talked with this employee about her feelings, in the moment, we learned that this person had felt a lack of control in her own life, that she gets overstimulated by noise and believes it is our job to prevent any and all injuries by not allowing any risky behavior. We met as a group and brainstormed some ideas to help this person find some different coping mechanisms. We made changes to our schedule and where she needed to be when. It's not perfect, but this coworker is developing trust in knowing that she has a team that will support her and be curious without judging her. And she is learning to hear feedback from others. Love Ted Lasso, and we tried to add a video, but it's not working right now. So, all right, next slide. Strategy number 5, meet people where they are. So I've included 2 memes that really apply to our students, but really meeting people where they are applies to every stakeholder you work with. Meeting people where they are applies to all stakeholders, although you will apply different techniques with different groups. So when I travel around my state, sometimes I'm talking to conservative or rural communities. I meet them where they are by adjusting how I dress, and I tweak my talking points, still advocating in a way I'm proud of, but differently than I may speak in an urban setting. I found if I push my agenda too fast, I lose people and I lose the opportunity to make that connection. So if I meet them where they are and build that relationship, then there's trust. Once there's trust, I can eventually push a little harder down the road to advocate for what I want. It's been pretty successful so far. Working with students every day, this is where I find this tremendously helpful. Every student's different and they're different day to day. So we have to meet them where they are that moment in that day, and it changes frequently. This year, I have a student who immigrated from South America a few weeks before school began. He was angry, he hit frequently, and his only English consisted of cuss words. His behavior was causing others to not want to be around him, and he was isolated. Nationally, we know that students of color are disciplined at a much higher rate than Caucasian students. By meeting him where he was, we were able to focus on growth instead of discipline. Should always be our goal. We work to understand our student's background, culture, identity, and what he was bringing into the learning space. We focused on helping him learn English phrases that he needed to get along with others so that he could communicate instead of hitting. We front-loaded his day with positive attention from staff. We learned as much as possible about his likes and dislikes and tried to reinforce those daily. We realized that after his school day, he was sitting in an office at the restaurant where his family works, playing on an iPhone and listening to way too adult language going on in the restaurant kitchen. So we advocated for him to join our after-school program. We ignored negative behavior unless it was unsafe and rewarded everyone in the class for making positive choices. Over time, he realized we were safe people that took the time to get to know him and had high expectations for him. He realized learning English made his life easier and more fun. While he was becoming so popular, his classmates have begun to learn Spanish 2 years before they begin dual immersion. He is now thriving in our classroom. He's excited to come to school, and the way he looks into our eyes, smiles, and hugs us affirms that we have developed an authentic, positive relationship. Think about how you can meet people where you are. Next slide. Oh, actually, can we go back to that slide? Thanks. So the two memes I have up there, I think really speak to what I just talked about. As educators, the more we know about who we teach, the more effective we will be with what we teach. Taking the time to get to know our students isn't fluff time, it's academic time. Either way, it's time. We can spend time up front, giving the positive attention so children feel heard and loved, or we can spend our time disciplining and correcting. Either way, it's time. And I heard that in the chat. Every child you pass in the hall has a story that needs to be heard. Maybe you are the one meant to hear it. I think ESPs are those people more than teachers. They are the first people that children see in the morning when they get on the bus. They're the first people that greet them when they walk into school. They feed them at lunch and sit with them and talk with them. They are paraeducators that are working one-on-one or in small groups in the classroom. We are the face and the ears that help to make sure our students' needs are being met at all levels. All right, next slide. Okay, so we have some additional strategies. Have clear expectations in all of your relationships. People don't read minds, and you have to make sure they know what you are expecting. Reinforce the behavior and outcomes you want to see more of. And this applies to adults just as much as kids. We have to train people and let them understand what works for us so that we can encourage them to do that more often. Follow up with the people you're trying to build relationships with, and continue to build and nurture the relationship, even when you don't need anything from them. People can tell when you're trying to be transactional in a relationship. And by focusing on nurturing the relationship when you don't need things really will help to grow that relationship. Let's see. Let me go back for a second to reinforce behaviors. So no matter what stakeholder you're working with, you need to be clear when you tell others what you want, need, or expect. Check in to make sure that you understand their expectations and they understand your expectations. Make sure you are in agreement and work together to find the shared interest behind the requests. Remember to ask for what you want instead of stating what you don't want. An example would be telling students that you want them to use walking feet and quiet voices in the hall versus stop running and you're too loud. Both interactions take time, but which strategy will help to develop the relationship? Strategy 7, reinforce the behavior and outcomes you want to see more. This strategy works with all ages because most people like to be affirmed that you approve of their behavior or the outcome of their effort. With students, I often ignore disruptive behavior and instead reward students who are modeling good choices. As soon as the disruption stops, I reward the new positive behavior, increasing the likelihood that it'll happen again. If you have a meeting with a stakeholder and you like how it went, let them know specifically what worked well. Even if most of it went poorly, comment on something that worked. It will help to keep that relationship growing and positive. And remember that shaming people for their beliefs or values never has contributed to a healthy relationship. Strategy 8, follow up and continue to build and nurture relationships, even when you don't need something from them. This will reinforce the authenticity of the relationship by not making your relationship feel transactional. I'll come back to my representative. I make sure that I follow her on social media and look for actions or bills that I can compliment her on and show some appreciation. I'm trying to create more regular check-ins throughout the year instead of just during the legislative session. Send them holiday cards, whatever it is to keep building that trust when you don't need something from them. Strategy 9, learn from the outcomes. Reflect after both positive and negative interactions. Assessing and exploring the outcomes is the only way to grow. Was the interaction authentic? Were assumptions made by anyone? Did you meet them where they were versus who you want them to be? Was there good intent from all parties? Were you curious or judgmental? Were the expectations explicit and understood by everyone? Lastly, did you follow up afterwards to thank them and reinforce what went well? All right, slides. Next slide is another chat question. All right, you're going to answer in the chat box. Are there any other strategies that you've used when trying to find commonalities and shared values with stakeholders? Please post in the chat. Asking questions, absolutely, being curious. I ask people personal questions. Yep, listening. I like to ask people what they think about what I'm working on. Like if I'm speaking to a legislature, I might ask what their experience was with public education. Did they go to public school? Have their children attended public school? What was that like for them? So that I can figure out where their values lie and make them feel heard as well. All right. Great, I must have covered lots of strategies. I always like going to the initial family night in our school in August, absolutely. Finding similar interests and form a group working together. Yeah, absolutely. When I go to the Capitol in Utah, I am the only person that doesn't wear cowboy boots. And it's hard because it's not me, and it wouldn't be authentic of me to show up that way, but it is something that brings people together. Making sure that I'm engaging with school board members. Yeah, Pamela, show up at those meetings and talk every month. Let them know who the ESPs are and what amazing things they're doing. Awesome. I've checked for things they like on social media and make sure to slide it into conversations. Absolutely. Preparing for a meeting by knowing who someone is and what they're about is a fantastic strategy. Thanks, Rashida. We'll give it a few more seconds here. All right, let's go to the next slide. All right. Even with our best intentions, sometimes conversations don't go the way we want them to. So what do you do when the conversation doesn't go well? Misunderstandings happen. Feelings get hurt. Egos get involved sometimes. Some people just look for a fight and will feel happy to get a reaction from you. When I notice I'm feeling uncomfortable, disrespected, or unsafe, first I start by telling the other person that I feel dysregulated and need to take a moment to take some breaths. This lets the other person know that you're uncomfortable, but you're taking ownership over your feelings instead of blaming them. And I usually find that the other person will also take some deep breaths. Repeat what was said and ask for more information. Did I hear you correctly? Did I hear you say that teachers are indoctrinating children and corrupting them? Is that what you meant? Can you give me some examples? Call them out on it and ask for more information. Maybe you did misunderstand, or maybe when they hear what they're saying out loud, they will react differently. All right. If it's still not going well, reschedule the conversation for another time. Say, I think we have come to an impasse. Why don't we take some time to regroup and come back together when we both are calm and can be respectful to one another? It's always okay to stop and set your boundary. And then remember that not all relationships will work. If you have done the relationship building on your side and the other stakeholder crosses your boundaries consistently, walk away before you develop an enemy, because an enemy will try to discredit you with all the other stakeholders you've worked so hard to build trust with. Remember, your time is limited, so don't waste it on people or organizations that won't meet you halfway. Knowing when to walk away is wisdom. Being able to is courage. Walking away with your head held high is dignity. All right, do we have time for one more chat question? All right. What are some other strategies you have used when the conversation didn't go as planned? Please post in the chat below. What do you do when the conversation starts to go bad? Gets off course? Asking curious questions. Absolutely. Ask them to refine their comments. Being curious versus the judgmental is always a great start when it goes bad. I don't know if you all have ever had that experience. When I first started doing this work, I did have conversations that went badly. But because I've learned these techniques, I have fewer and fewer of them because I can anticipate what needs to happen. Asking to take breaks, repeat back to them what they said so I can have clarity on what they're saying. Redirection, that's great. We do that every day with students. Deborah, agree to disagree, then come back with a smile. Absolutely. Look at it as an opportunity to find out what they can get on board with. Always have an agenda, and I would say an intention before the conversation. Get quiet and listen to what they say. Silence is golden sometimes. It tells people that there's a problem going on. Go back and restate the question and make sure everyone agrees on the topic or question. Absolutely. Setting those expectations with people. All right, we'll give it a few more questions. I am not responsible for healing everyone. I can only help people who are ready to help themselves when they are ready. I am there for them. David S., I like your responses. That is absolutely right. It is not our job to heal people or to change them, but all we can do is show up and try to build authentic relationships, because it's never been more important to find ways to work with people that are very different from ourselves. I think there are outside forces that benefit from when we are divided as a country. And we need to take the hard work to find ways to work together to get what we all need. I usually just smile politely and remain silent for a few heartbeats. Asking the individual what they would like. Absolutely. Sounds like everybody's pretty good at this skill. Great. All right, so we have about 10 more minutes. We've got one more slide. All right, I want to thank you all for taking the time to join tonight's webinar. You are showing up for your students and your fellow educators, schools, unions, and communities. I hope that each of you is walking away with some new tools you can use at home. I know I have learned from each of you. My contact information is on the slide, and feel free to reach out with questions, to share your stories, or just say hello. We're going to have a few questions from members, and I want to close with, alone we can do so little, and together we can do so much. All right, Jenny, do we have some questions from?
Thank you, Jen. We do. We have several questions. The first one I wanted to share with you, how do you adjust? Earlier you talked about you were speaking to a group, and I believe you said they were conservative, more conservative than you. The question's, how do you adjust the way you spoke? I think you said you were tweaking your talking points and you changed the way you dress. How do you do that but still show authenticity?
Right. I think it's important to know your audience before you approach that. So when I travel around the state, I adjust with every different association I meet with. I look into what their community is like, what they value, so that I know how far I can discuss topics, right? If we push too far too fast, we lose that opportunity. People will turn you off, and you rarely get a chance to try again. So it's important, I think, to push just past their limit, not jump all the way over. So I do. And when I'm going to a rural community, I definitely tone down my Park City, right? I show up in my hoodies and, work boots. And I don't mention, that I have kids that are on the LGBTQ spectrum. Until I know that I've built that relationship and it's safe, but I still might advocate for LGBTQ plus rights and educate them on that, because they don't often, some of these communities don't know. There may be people that that are gay or on that spectrum, but they might not know who they are because it's not safe to be out. Recently, I got to go to Illinois and attend the Illinois Education Association's ESP conference. And I was so excited. When I live in Utah, I don't get to have many diverse conversations Black people make up 1.7% of people in Utah. So it's so great for me to get to go have those opportunities too, and hear perspectives that I can bring back and share with people in my state, because we really are pretty isolated as far as diversity goes. But I don't want to shame them or force it down their throat.
Thank you, Jen. The next question, can you touch a little bit on setting healthy boundaries in relationships, either new or established relationships?
I love that. You know, I think I was in my 40s before I even discovered what boundaries meant. Um, I think first, you have to really be centered and know what your boundaries are. What will you tolerate and what will you not tolerate? And how will you communicate that to people? If you don't know that, you can't let other people know where your boundaries are. For example, if things get disrespectful with a member, I can remind them clearly that I don't let people talk to me that way, and that I'm working hard for them and I need them to talk to me with respect. Um, I think it's important to understand what other people's boundaries are as well, and respect that. It's the only way we can make authentic relationships. But I think noticing what you feel in your body during a conversation will tell you where your boundary is. So you really need to be in touch with your feelings and your body to know when that's going wrong.
Thank you very much. Next question. Do you ever feel like you're moving away from your own moral compass when trying to find commonalities with someone who has a totally different stand on an issue?
It is a challenge. I live in a state where I have different views than a lot of the people I work with and talk with. Um, I have to say, when I meet with my representative, I feel a little dirty afterwards. But I have to build that relationship if I want to advocate for education, and to let her know that her policy, her anti-transgender policies are hurting families. Um, I think it's okay to show up and have these conversations and still be clear that you don't agree with what they're doing, that they are stepping on people's rights, and that you don't appreciate that. I think it's important to let them know that, but do it in a respectful way, so that you feel okay about yourself when you leave. But it's still important to show up and have those conversations. Just like my story about Andy, if I made that assumption, I would have never learned that we have very similar outlooks as far as policy and politics. So sometimes people surprise you too. So it's important to give them a chance.
Thank you very much. Last question. So are there any techniques that you use with students when, like, let's say two students are struggling to find common ground on something that are, different than what you might use with adults?
I think that's going to depend on the age group, right? I work with 4-year-olds, so it's easy to say in 2 minutes they get to do that. Or, we have a time away where we might go and sit down and use the talking stick to take turns and to hear from each other. I really think it is still the same concepts, right? We just apply them a little bit differently. Um, it's hard, kids will always disagree and have arguments, but they sure do forgive faster than adults do.
Thank you for that as well. So as the ESP of the year, you go out and you speak to various audiences. How do you handle the stress that comes with public speaking and speaking to a variety of audiences, some of which may not, or some of the individuals there who may not share your beliefs and moral values?
Yeah. It's something that absolutely did not come naturally to me. I have had a lot of coaching through the NEA with the communications team. Um, and it actually made me feel really self-conscious and kind of made it even harder for me to have feel confident when I was speaking in public. So I worked with my therapist, and she had some really great tools. I try to keep it simple. When I had more anxiety when I first started. So she introduced me to the concept of tapping, which you're tapping on, oh no, my lights just went out. um, Tapping on pressure points to reset your nervous system. That worked at first, but it's a lot. So I've really tried to streamline what I do. So I like to use the five senses check-in, and I do it before I practice a speech so that I associate that calm feeling with the speech. And then I do it before I have an engagement. And while I'm doing it, every once in a while, I'll just check in with one sense. What am I seeing? What am I smelling? What can I taste? What am I hearing? And what do I feel? Which can be tactile or inside you. What am I feeling right now? And then taking some deep breaths. So there are lots of tools, but my suggestion is to keep it really simple.
Thank you very much. Thank you for being with us tonight, Jen, and sharing your expertise with us on this topic.
To request a general session-specific certificate of completion as a participant of recorded sessions, please send your requests by emailing espqweb@nea.org. All requests must include the session title and the on-screen certificate of completion code. Session certificates will not be provided if your viewer code is not included in the email request. Note, due to limitations in our ability to track attendance after live sessions, requests for personalized certificates will only be provided for participants of live webinars whose attendance can be verified. The certificate received for viewing recorded sessions will be session-specific but will not include personalized names.